we will get started. I'll start with an entree. The shiur is not about what I'm about to speak about, but there's a beautiful, beautiful Dvar Torah that I've shared many times. I saw it a number of years ago from the Biala Rebbe. The Biala Rebbe explains as follows. Come in. So the Biala Rebbe says as follows. When Lavan, what did Lavan accuse Yaakov of? V'ata halo halachta ki nichsof nichsafta lebet avicha lama ganavta et Elokai. Lavan Harami, he chases down Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu left without telling him. He took his wife, he took his children, he took his property, and he just left. So Lavan chases him down, and he accuses him. He says, why did you steal my God? Vaya'an Yaakov, vayomer leLavan, ki yareti ki amarti pen tigzol et benotecha mi'imi. And Yaakov didn't know that who took the teraphim, who took Lavan's gods. It was Rachel Imenu. Rachel, before she left, she didn't want to leave her father with Avodah Zarah, so she stole them. And Yaakov had no idea that it was Rachel. Ve'Rachel lakat et ha-terafim v'tesimem bekar hagamal. She put it under where she sits by the camel, in the camel's saddle. V'teshev alehem v'yimashesh Lavan et kol ha'ohel ve'lo matzah. So Rachel stole the terafim from her father. Lavan accuses Yaakov of taking the terafim. Rachel doesn't tell Yaakov Avinu, and Yaakov Avinu has no idea that it was Rachel who took them. So the Biala Rebbe asks, beautiful question. Today, when you want to get guidance, or when something's happening in your life, what do? You go to a mekubal. Go to Eretz Yisrael, you go to a mekubal, he looks at your forehead, he looks at your palm, he makes some calculations on a paper. When a person wants to know what's going on a deeper level, what's going on behind the scenes, they go to a mekubal, they're tzaddikim, a Kabbalist. They go to tzaddikim, they go to very righteous people. Are we to say that Yaakov was not aware that Rachel took them? That Yaakov Beruach HaKodesh, he couldn't figure out, or when Lavan brought it to his attention that somebody stole from him, that somebody took his terafim, can we really assume, can we believe that Yaakov didn't know, or he couldn't figure out that somebody in his family took them, that it was Rachel who took them? Today we can go to a mekubal, we can go to a Kabbalist and get guidance. What? Yaakov Avinu Bechir Sheba Avot. He was the greatest from amongst our forefathers. He couldn't figure out, he didn't know, he couldn't see Beruach HaKodesh that it was Rachel. How is it that Yaakov Avinu didn't know, even though Rachel didn't tell him, she hid it from him? Let's not bring any proof from here to hide anything from your spouse. But Rachel hid it from Yaakov Avinu that she took the terafim. How is it that Yaakov didn't know Beruach HaKodesh? So the Biala Rebbe gives a beautiful answer. He says, we see from here that the midah, the attribute of tzniut, of modesty, is more powerful than Ruach HaKodesh. It's more powerful than divine inspiration. Rachel didn't want Yaakov Avinu to know. Yes, Yaakov Avinu had Ruach HaKodesh. Yes, Yaakov Avinu Mekubalim could see what others can't see. But so to speak, comes Rachel, she was jamming the frequencies. She didn't want Yaakov to know. She was so tzanua, she was so modest. She didn't want him to know that she took the terafim, and due to her incredible tzniut, incredible modesty. And when I talk about modesty, I'm not just talking about clothing. I'm talking about it as a way of life, as a personality. She was able to block. The Biala Rebbe says she was able to block the Ruach HaKodesh of Yaakov Avinu, and he couldn't figure it out. She had this incredible modesty, this incredible midah of shtika, of not sharing what she didn't what didn't need to be shared. Incidentally, who are the three people in our history who knew a secret and didn't share it? Let's go in order. Binyamin, the brother sold Yosef. Who was the only one of the only brothers that knew of the sale of Yosef and didn't share it? Was Binyamin. Binyamin knew that the brother sold Yosef. He knew that Yosef wasn't attacked by a wild animal. He knew that the story that they told their father wasn't true. Did Binyamin ever say anything? Did he ever expose his brothers? Never said anything. Who's another one? Esther HaMalka. She also displayed incredible discipline. Mordechai told her, when you become queen, when you're in the palace of Achashverosh, do not reveal your nationality until the time is right. And she had a lot of pressure from Achashverosh. He didn't know. Where do you come from? What's your pedigree? What's your yichus? What happened to the last wife? What happened to the last queen that refused Achashverosh? Off with your head. And yet, when she was asked for her nationality, she never revealed it to Achashverosh until the time was right. And finally, who was the last person who knew it, so to speak, a secret and didn't reveal it? Shaul HaMelech. Shaul HaMelech was appointed king. Did he reveal it to anybody? Didn't reveal it, didn't say anything. Didn't post it to Facebook, not to Twitter, didn't go on social media. He was so humble. He had this midav shtika. It was so second nature to him that he never revealed it. Now, incidentally, these three individuals, Binyamin, Shaul, and Esther HaMalka, where do they come from? They all come from Rachel. They all inherited this midah, this attribute of being quiet, this attribute of tzniut, this attribute of modesty. They all got it from Rachel. They were all put into positions where it would have been so easy to reveal, yet Shaul did not reveal, Binyamin did not reveal, Shaul did not reveal, and Esther HaMalka did not reveal. In any case, we see from here, the Bialer Rebbe explains, we see from here the incredible midah, how powerful the attribute of modesty is, that it's even greater than Ruach HaKodesh, that Rachel was able to jam the frequencies of Yaakov Avinu to the extent that he didn't know that it was his own wife that took the terafim. Okay, let's go. That was the entree, the parperot, as they say in Hebrew. There's a pasuk, we're in Parashat Vayetze, correct? But there's a pasuk in Parashat Toldot that makes our parasha so difficult to learn. It says in Parashat Toldot about Avraham Avinu, Ekev asher shama Avraham bekoli, because Avraham, he hearkened, he listened to my voice, vayishmor mishmarti mitzvotai chukotai vetorotai. He kept what's Ramban explains what's mishmarti. He kept the rabbinical enactments. Mitzvotai, he kept those mitzvot, even if God would not command you in them. For example, do not steal, do not murder. He kept those mitzvot that even if a person would not be commanded, it would be obvious that a person should do them. Chukotai, those laws that don't have any reasons. Vetorotai, he kept Torah shebal peh. He kept the oral Torah, and Torah shebichtav, he kept the written Torah. Vayishmor mishmarti mitzvotai chukotai vetorotai. This pasuk is one of the sources that Avotenu HaKedoshim kept the entire Torah. From this pasuk, the Ramban breaks down each word, every single aspect of the Torah. Torah shebichtav, the written word. Torah shebal peh, the oral Torah. Whether it was a rabbinical enactment, whether it's a mitzvah, whether it's a chok, any aspect, any type of commandment you can think of from the Torah, we see from here that our forefathers kept them, that Avraham Avinu kept them. The problem begins, if that's the case, come to our parasha. Why does this pasuk make our parasha so difficult to learn? It makes our parasha so difficult to read. What happened in our parasha? Yaakov Avinu, he marries Rachel and Leah. If he married, you're not allowed to marry two sisters. If I'm not mistaken, it's a pasuk in Parashat Haremot. Now, you could tell me it's before Matan Torah, they didn't keep the Torah. But we see from here that they did keep the Torah. Ekev asher shama Avraham bekoli, vayishmor mishmarti, mitzvotai, chukotai, vetorotai. The pasuk goes to great length to tell us that every single aspect, any commandment, any form of commandment you could think of, the Avotenu HaKedoshim, they kept them. If that's the case, and the Ramban actually, this question of how could Yaakov Avinu have married two wives, it's dealt with in Parashat Toldot. As much as it's dealt with in our Parashat Vayetze, the Ramban and other commentators, they deal with it not in our Parasha, they deal with it in last week's Parasha. Why in last week's Parasha? Because last week's Parasha we learned that they kept the entire Torah. If they kept the entire Torah, how did Yaakov Avinu end up rationalizing or allowing himself to marry two sisters? Who was he supposed to marry at the beginning? He was supposed to marry Rachel. It didn't work out. According to the Torah, are you allowed to marry two sisters? No. Not allowed to marry two sisters. So once
it's because not allowed to marry two sisters, or not allowed to marry two women?
Not allowed to marry two sisters. Two sisters. Can't marry two sisters. So if you're not allowed to marry two sisters, granted he was tricked. Granted Lavan took him for a ride. But once the deed is done, once he realizes he's married to Leah, how could he rationalize to not go marry Rachel? You're going to tell me, look, Rabbi, it was before Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, they didn't keep the Torah. It's not true. It says in Parashat Toldot that Avotenu HaKedoshim did keep the Torah. What message did Yaakov Avinu send to Lavan? Im Lavan garti. How does Rashi explain it? Im Lavan garti. When Yaakov goes to Esav, and he knows Esav wants to kill him, he wants to attack him. What message does he send him? Im Lavan garti, taryag mitzvot shamarti. I kept the entire Torah. What's another proof that our forefathers kept the Torah? That Yosef HaTzadik, he sent a message to Yaakov when he revealed himself to his brothers. He sent a message, Egla Arufa. I still remember the last lesson that we learned. Yaakov Avinu, in our parashav, did he go straight to find a wife, or did he take a detour? He took a 14-year detour. He went to yeshiva for 14 years before he went to get married. That wasn't the initial plan. But as soon as he left his parents told him to go find a wife. He didn't go straight to find a wife. He took a 14-year detour, went to yeshiva for 14 years, then he went to find a wife. So we see that they learned Torah and they kept the Torah. It would be so much easier, our parasha would be so much easier to understand if we say our forefathers didn't keep the Torah. Then it's understandable. It was before Matan Torah. God didn't give the Torah. Lavan tricked Yaakov Avinu into marrying Leah. So he married Leah and he also married Rachel. It was before Matan Torah. But once you tell me that they did keep the Torah, it's pasuk mefurash, Ekev asher shama Avraham bekoli, vayishmor mishmarti, mitzvotai, chukotai, vetorotai. It says that Avraham kept the Torah, and our Chachamim understand that he passed that on to his descendants. That being the case, how did Yaakov rationalize taking two wives? It is clear as day, Parashat Haremot, amongst the arayot, the forbidden relationships, a man is not allowed to marry two sisters. So how did he rationalize marrying two sisters? This pasuk in Parashat Toldot makes our parasha extremely difficult to understand. We're coming. We're going. I got to build it up. We're not done yet.
Building the suspense.
So, according to one opinion, Gemara Yevamot explains, I don't believe we are posek like this lahalacha, but here's a surprising halacha. If you have an individual, let's call him Reuven, not Jewish, and he's nitgayer, ger shenitgayer kekatan, he has a status of being reborn. Can he marry his sister? A person comes, a non-Jew comes, he converts to Judaism. His sister comes, she converts to Judaism. I don't mean, just bear with me in the example. Theoretically, halachically speaking, are they allowed to get married to each other? According to the Torah, by the letter of the law. L'halacha, we don't go like this, but by the letter of the law, they are allowed to get married. So you could say, how's that possible, Rabbi? Because we look at them as a completely new individual. We look at them that they're completely reborn. A person that converts, we look at him like he's reborn. Therefore, if theoretically siblings would convert, a brother and sister would convert by the strict letter of the law, Gemara and Yevamot, by the strict letter of the law, they are allowed to get married. If I'm not mistaken, the Rabbanan, we say they're not allowed to get married, but by the strict biblical word, they are allowed to get married. What happened here? Comes Yaakov, he's coming to get married to Rachel and Leah. Now, he had to, so to speak, to convert them. They're not from Bnei Avraham. They have a status of Bnei Noach. They come from the descendants of Noach. Since they have a status of Bnei Noach, once he converts them, it's like they're not related. It's like they're not sisters. Since they're not considered sisters, they're not considered biological sisters once they convert, because each one is considered to be reborn. Therefore, al pi halacha, we don't look at it as he married two sisters. He married two individuals. They were sisters, but once they convert to Judaism, once they accept upon themselves Torah and mitzvot, they are no longer considered sisters. That's one answer. A second answer is, let's pay careful attention. Let's go, what did we say? We said that a person is not allowed to marry two sisters. Where does it say that a person is not? Do I have the pasuk? A person is not allowed to marry two sisters. What does it say in the pasuk? Ve'isha el achota lo tikach litzroch. When it says you're not allowed to marry two sisters, what does it say? You're not allowed to marry two sisters. Why not? To make them rivals, to make them competitors. What happens when you marry two sisters? They become rivals. They become competitors. It doesn't say that, for example, is a man allowed to marry a mother and daughter? That's also a forbidden relationship. A person is not allowed to marry a mother and daughter. Does the pasuk say why? Pasuk doesn't say why. It just says a man is not allowed to marry a mother and daughter.
They're not marrying each other. They marry the men.
I'm sorry?
The sister not married each other. They married the man.
They married the man. But the pasuk says it's not allowed. And the pasuk gives a reason which it doesn't give by other forbidden relationships. Only by sisters does it give a reason. Why can't you marry two sisters? Because it makes them into rivals. Even more, we said that the halacha is that a man is not allowed to marry two sisters. Al pi halacha, if a man marries a woman, and God forbid she passes away and she has a sister, is he allowed? In that case, he's allowed to marry the sister. What about if you have a mother and daughter? Man marries a woman. She had a daughter from a previous relationship. The woman passes away. Is he allowed to marry the daughter? Yes. No, he's not allowed to marry the daughter even after death. But if a man marries a woman and she passes away and she has a sister, is he allowed to marry the sister? Yes. What's the difference? Why do we make a difference? Because it's the only forbidden relationship of marrying two sisters that the Torah gives a reason, that the Torah explains. Why can't you marry two sisters? Because that's going to make them into rivals, into competitors. They're going to hate each other. That means if it's not going to make them competitors, if it's not going to make them into rivals, you are allowed. When is that so? When one of them passed away. So because the pasuk explains and gives a reason, therefore that's why lehalacha, you are allowed to, a person can marry a woman. If she passes away, he can marry his sister.
Can the mother and the daughter be rivals in the same story?
No, the Torah doesn't say that by a mother and daughter. It just says you're not allowed to. So that's in life and in death. Oh, so fine. That's it's a good question. We'll leave it for Parashat Haremot. So as follows. Yes, Avotenu HaKedoshim, they kept the entire Torah. But since specifically by this relationship, the Torah gives a reason why it's forbidden. Yaakov Avinu saw, right? How did he end up with Leah? He ended up with Leah because Rachel gave the simanim. Rachel gave the signs. By the way, I'm sure many of you know the answer to this. What were the signs? What was the code, the secret code between Yaakov and Rachel? Chala, Nida, and Adlakat Nerot. So that was the code between Yaakov and Rachel. It was only between them. Rachel comes and gives the code to Leah. Then after Yaakov Avinu rationalizes and says, you know what? I'm going to go marry Leah. I'm going to also marry Rachel. How did he rationalize? Because the pasuk says if it makes them competitors, if it makes them rivals, by the fact that Rachel allowed herself to give the simanim, Yaakov Avinu saw that they're not going to be rivals and they're not going to be competitors, and that's how he allowed himself to marry them. That's the second answer why Yaakov Avinu was able to marry both of them, because specifically by this forbidden relationship, it gives a reason. And since Yaakov Avinu saw that this reason seemingly didn't apply, therefore he allowed himself to marry. So now we have, these are the answers that are given. How Yaakov Avinu allowed himself to marry. Either we look at them like gerim, like converts, or since the pasuk gives a reason and the reason didn't apply, he rationalized and he allowed himself to marry them. The problem now is, okay, so we figured out how al pi halacha Yaakov Avinu was able to marry Rachel and Leah as sisters. The problem is that there's a Gemara. The Gemara says as follows: in the end of times, Hakadosh Baruch Hu is going to make a seudah. He's going to make a meal for all the tzaddikim. Who's going to be at the seudah? Abraham's going to be there. Yitzchak's going to be there. Yaakov, Avotenu HaKedoshim, Moshe, Yehoshua, David HaMelech. And at the end of the seudah, what do we do when we finish a meal? When you have at least 3 men or 10 men, I actually was doing this halacha, when you have at least 3 men, you do a zimun with a... What do? They do a birkat hamazon with a kos shel bracha. They do it over wine. So now you have all the tzaddikim, the greatest tzaddikim, avotenu hakedoshim, all sitting at the same meal, gemaran pesachim. So they're gonna say, okay, Abraham, you're the first forefather. You do the zibun. You make birkat hamazon over the kos shel bracha. Abraham Avinu is going to demur. He's going to refuse. He says, look, I'm sorry. I had Yishmael as a child. I can't do birkat hamazon over the kos shel bracha. So then they're going to go to Yitzchak. Okay, Yitzchak. Here they're going to pass the kos to him. He says, no, I also can't do it because I had Esav. Then they're going to come to Yaakov Avinu and they're going to say, okay, you do birkat hamazon, you do the kos, you do the bracha on the kos shel bracha. What's Yaakov going to say? I can't either. I married 2 sisters. Then they're going to go to Moshe Rabbeinu. You do it. No, I never went into Eretz Yisrael. They come to Yeshua bin Nun. I also can't do it. I never had a son. Finally, they're going to come to David HaMelech, and David HaMelech is going to say Birkat HaMazon on the Kos Shel Bracha. So, according to this Gemara, we just found that halachically it was permissible. Either you say that they're considered like converts, or you say that the reasoning why you can't marry 2 sisters didn't apply in that case. So why didn't Yaakov Avinu want to do Birkat HaMazon? What was that? They say, you ever feel that Jewish guilt? Yeah. If Mrs. Cheryl last week had so much Jewish guilt not to come to the lecture. She really made a huge effort to come. You ever feel that Jewish guilt? So we see that Yaakov Avinu has tremendous Jewish guilt. He will not say, not because all his children were perfect. How do we say that in Hebrew? Mitato shelema, his bed was complete, was perfect. All his children were tzaddikim, unlike Abraham and unlike Yitzchak. But he still had that Jewish guilt that he married 2 sisters. What do you mean? Al pi halacha, you were fine. Let's go to another source. At the end of his life, Yaakov Avinu asks his son Yosef for a favor. What favor does he ask his son to do for him? Bury me in Eretz Yisrael. Now, I'm just going to say this so we appreciate this a little more. Was that a hypocritical request? Was that being a bit of a hypocrite?
No.
Yes.
Why?
When Rachel passed away, they were half a day away from Me'arat HaMachpelah, and he buried her on the way. And now he's in Egypt. Yosef, I want you to take my body to Eretz Yisrael. Really? Did you take mom's body to Me'arat HaMachpelah, or did you bury her on the wayside? Whatever explanations you'll give, that one day she's going to pray for Klal Yisrael, they're going to walk by her. But Yaakov Avinu, he found himself in a very, very difficult predicament. Almost the same. When his wife passed away, he didn't even take her half a day to Me'arat HaMachpelah. Now that he's outside Eretz Yisrael and he wants to be buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah, he's asking Yosef to take his body from Egypt all the way to Me'arat HaMachpelah. Hold on a second. Did you do that for mommy? You didn't do that for your wife. You didn't do that for mom. And now you're asking me to do that for you all the way from Egypt? Is that fair? Scared of what? Whatever reason, beseder, I agree with you. Aval, you see how life's funny sometimes? He didn't take Rachel Imenu to Me'arat HaMachpelah. Now he needs to be taken to Me'arat HaMachpelah. And he comes to Yosef, take me to Me'arat HaMachpelah. You read the Pirushim, Yaakov Avinu was scared of Yosef. Yaakov was scared when he was talking to Yosef. What is he scared of? Because he didn't do that for Rachel, and now he's asking Yosef to do it for him. So the question becomes, why didn't he do it for Rachel? So there are a number of explanations given. One explanation, the Ramban writes, if I'm not, is it Parashat Vayechi? Parashat Vayechi. The Ramban writes, listen to these words. Va'ani savur, the Ramban is talking. Shayu elu divrei hitnatzelut. He was apologizing to Yosef. What was he apologizing about? אבל הכוונה ליעקב שלא הוליך אותה למערה כדי שלא יקבור שם. Why really did Yaakov Avinu not take Rachel to מערת המכפלה? The Ramban explains. שלא הוליך אותה למערה כדי שלא לקבור שם שתי אחיות כי יבוש מאבותיו. Mrs. Etty, what does it mean כי יבוש מאבותיו? He would be embarrassed. He's going to be buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah, Adam and Hava, Abraham and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, and he's going to be buried with two wives. Keneged what the Torah says, married two wives. He was embarrassed. He couldn't. So I know there's other explanations why he didn't bury Rachel and Me'arat HaMachpelah. But according to this Ramban, according to this explanation, he was embarrassed. He couldn't bring himself. He buried her on the side. He didn't want to go with his father and grandfather and show them that he buried two wives, so to speak. Wait a second. I thought we said al pi halacha that it was okay. And now we just brought two proofs. That incidentally, where are those two proofs from? They're from the afterlife. One of them is at the end of times when all the tzaddikim are going to have a seudah, and one of them is that he doesn't want to be buried in Me'arat HaMachpelah with two wives. Why is it embarrassed? His father's there, his grandfather's there, Abraham is there, Yitzchak's there, going to see him. Yaakov, what happened? We all kept the Torah. What happened to you? I don't understand. What is he embarrassed about? We just explained that it's okay what he did. So I saw a beautiful explanation. That let's take a step back. What was Yaakov Avinu's destiny? Was his destiny just, and think about this before you answer, I'll answer, but just think about it let it marinate, as they say. What was Yaakov Avinu's destiny? Was his destiny to just marry Rachel? Or indeed was his destiny to marry both Rachel and Leah? But what happened? What happened when he bought the firstborn right from Esav? When he bought the firstborn right from Esav, everything changed. Destiny changed. What did they used to say? They used to say that the firstborn of Yitzchak and Rivka is going to marry the firstborn of Lavan. So Esav and Leah are going to get married. And the second one, Yaakov and Rachel are going to get married. But what happened when Esav sold the firstborn right? That came with a package. What was the package? Well, it's the firstborn right, the berachot, and Leah. So originally granted, the way the world was supposed to be was Esav and Leah and Yaakov and Rachel. Everything changed after he bought the firstborn right. He got the firstborn right, he got the berachot, and who else did he get? He got Leah. So now Yaakov Avinu's destiny, so to speak, changed. He's going to marry both Rachel and Leah. What's the significance of bearing both Rachel and Leah? Is that Yaakov knew. So Yaakov knew that he's destined to marry Rachel and Leah. Because he knew that on an esoteric level, Rachel had certain kochot and Leah had certain kochot. And those kochot had to come down into the world. And that would be part of the tikkun, of the rectification of the world. I'll tell you something interesting. When I had my first daughter, Her name is, we name her Simcha Leah. We're Moroccan, so like many Sfaradim, we name after the living. So Simcha, we named after my mother-in-law. She should be well. And we also named her Leah. Why did we name her Leah? Because who brought the firstborn to Yaakov Avinu? I remember telling my wife this. Leah brought the firstborn. Leah bought the kehuna. She brought the leviah. She brought the royalty. So much comes from Leah. Yaakov Avinu didn't realize what he was getting in Leah. She brings the bechor. She brings the kehuna. She brings the leviah. She brings the royalty. Such a beautiful name. So I told my wife we have to name her. We have to give the name Leah. Each one had their kochot that they were bringing into the world, and Yaakov Avinu understood on an esoteric level that Klal Yisrael would need these kochot. So yes, Yaakov Avinu knew he needed to marry both Rachel and Leah.
That's why Rachel has some jealousy for her.
Okay, but how is he going to do that, Mrs. Eti? If he knew al pi ruach hakodesh that he has to marry Rachel and Leah, how's that possible? How's it possible? And we said it earlier in the shiur. How is it possible to marry two sisters?
Unless they don't have jealousy and they convert.
No. The kosher way.
The kosher way.
If they die.
If one of them dies. So Yaakov Avinu knew that he was destined to marry both Rachel and Leah. How do you marry both Rachel and Leah without violating, being 100% kosher lemehadrin mina mehadrin? He would marry Rachel first. Beruach HaKodesh, he saw that she was going to pass away first. After she passes away, he marries Leah, and everything is super kosher. Everything is amazing. He doesn't violate or even an echo, even a spidget, or even indirectly, you can't hold him accountable for anything. Because al pi halacha, are you allowed to marry two sisters if one of them already passed away? The halacha is yes. There's no issue with that. So the entire plan, the destiny here was, yes, he's going to have the 12 Shevatim from Rachel and Leah and their maidservants. First he marries Rachel. Rachel is going to pass away early. Then he marries Leah. He builds Klal Yisrael, and we sail into the sunset, and Mashiach comes. But that's not what happened. What's the confusion? No, I'm not being clear.
Yeah, you're clear.
Okay. Okay. Right? Married Rachel, Leah. Rachel passes away first, then he's able to marry Leah. But what happened here? What do we say in the Haggadah? Lavan bikesh la'akor et hakol. Lavan, Yaakov Avinu's mission was to bring the world to its ultimate tikkun, to its ultimate rectification. And had he gotten married to Rachel and Leah properly, the way he envisioned it, he would have brought the world to its ultimate tikkun and its ultimate rectification. It would have been impossible to separate Klal Yisrael from the Borei Olam. Except comes Lavan, and he's doing everything in his power. Yaakov, when we say that Yaakov worked 7 years for Rachel, and then he worked another 7 years, what was Yaakov Avinu doing all those years? Yaakov Avinu was preparing himself. He understood he was doing tikkunim to the world. He was rectifying the world. Comes Lavan, and his agenda is the exact opposite. He wants to destroy Am Yisrael. He doesn't want the world to reach its ultimate tikkun. And they're having this battle, this covert battle, back and forth. And Yaakov Avinu emerged triumphant. Like the message in next week's Parashat that Yaakov sends to Esav. What does he say? Im Lavan galti taryag mitzvot shamarti. But Lavan got him in one area. He got him to marry two sisters. And even though that technically it's permissible, and we explained at the beginning of the shiur, we found places in halakha where you can explain it. But it wasn't perfect. It wasn't done right. Yaakov Avinu is the Bechir Sheba'avot. He's the crown jewel of Avotenu HaKedoshim. He's really not allowed to do that. Even if you could find basis in halakha like we did, but that's not the right way to do things. And what's the proof? Even in Shamayim he had this Jewish guilt. And he wouldn't bring her into Marat HaMachpelah because as kosher as it wasn't 100%. Lavan succeeded in putting this little rupture, this little tear, And Yaakov Avinu was not able to bring the world, to bring Klal Yisrael and Hashem together to its ultimate tikkun. And that's why Yaakov Avinu was embarrassed. That's why Yaakov Avinu wouldn't say Birkat HaMazon on the cross, and that's why Yaakov Avinu wouldn't bring Rachel into Me'arat HaMachpelah. As much as it was kosher, and we have basis in halacha, but it wasn't the right way to do things. The right way would have been to marry Rachel, wait till she passes away, which he saw in Ruach HaKodesh that she would pass away early, and then marry Leah. And Lavan sabotaged it. Lavan got in the way and he destroyed the plans of Yaakov Avinu. And even though it was so small, the world didn't reach its proper tikkun like it should have. And that was the problem. Another place we see this, if you go into the beginning of the parasha, by the way, this might be good news for some people, bad news for other people. You'll see what I mean. If you go back to it says the parasha, what happens what's the first thing? Yaakov Avinu gets to the Be'er. And what's the first thing he does when he sees Rachel? Vaishak Yaakov leRachel, vayisa et kolo, vayefk. He saw Rachel, he kissed her, and he started crying. And you see that he was wailing. Vayisa et kolo. He raised his voice and he was crying. Why was he crying all of a sudden? So the Chachamim explain he was crying because he saw that he wouldn't be buried with Rachel. So you could ask a very simple question. At this point in Yaakov's life, he has a lot of problems here. Esav wants to kill him. He's going to his wicked uncle. Lavan also wants to kill him. He doesn't have to have a penny to his name. Esav's son just robbed him of all his money. He's looking for a wife penniless. He has to get married, build a family, build a business. He has a lot going on at this stage of his life. But when he sees Rachel, he sees in Ruach HaKodesh that they're not going to be buried together, and he starts to cry. That's what he's worried about. At this stage, at this juncture, he doesn't have bigger problems. Get married, build a life. You can worry about, you have a few decades. You have many years to worry about that. But no, comes up right here. Vayishat Yaakov leRachel, vayisa et kolo. He raised his voice and he starts to cry. We're not going to be buried together. Why is he crying that they're not going to be buried together? So in Judaism, we saw this we spoke about this briefly, that when Avraham Avinu buried Sarah, it says the word kach. It says when you take a woman, ki kach ish isha. When a man takes a woman, what does it mean ki kach when he takes a woman? So we learn from the word kach. When Avraham Avinu bought a burial spot for Sarah, it says kach. By marriage, it says ki yikach ish isha. The same way when you buy something, you can buy with money. We learn from there that when two people get married, it can be done with money. Where do we learn that from? Because it uses the same expression, ki yikach ish isha, the expression, the word kach, and it also uses it when Avraham Avinu bought the burial spot for Sarah. So learns it from there that what does it mean ki yikach, not just to take, that when a man betroths a woman, when he gets married to a woman, one of the ways to get married is through money. Why are we learning it? It's a nice explanation. It's a nice connection. But if you remember, we asked, why are we learning it from when a man is burying his wife? From when Avraham is burying Sarah, we learn from that parasha, oh, by the way, you can get married with money because it uses the same word. It says kach. Avraham used money to bury Sarah Imenu, to buy the burial spot. And it also says ki yikach ish isha. Seems rather odd to learn it from there. So the rabbis learn. Why is it learned in that way? Because marriage is forever. I have good news and bad news depending on where you are. It's when the goyim get married. What do they say when they get married? Till death do us part. In Judaism, it's not like that. That the neshamot remain combined even after death. The neshamot remain combined. That's why we learned this drasha of ki yikach. It says here ki yikach, and it says over there kach, that we're learning it from when Avraham buried Sarah. Why did he invest so much? Why did he be so careful to take care of Sarah? Because she's still his wife. They're still on the neshamot are still connected. Why was Yaakov Avinu crying? Why was he crying? Because he saw that him and Rahel would not be buried together. So what? Especially at this point of his life. If we understand that a couple, it's forever. It's not till death do us part. It's for eternity, the Neshamot. When Yaakov Avinu sees in Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration, that they're not going to be buried together, he realized their marriage, something's going to be amiss. Something's going to be wrong in their marriage. He didn't know what at the time, but he realized something was not going to be 100% in their marriage. What ends up happening? He marries Leah, and he marries Rahel, but the marriage is not 100% kosher. That's what ends up being amiss. This that Yaakov cried, it was already a prelude. It was already a hint that something's going to be amiss in this marriage. And indeed, that's the way it transpired. He does end up marrying Rahel, but not under the most kosher of circumstances. And we see this once again in Me'arat HaMachpelah. By the way, what's the proof that a marriage is eternal? What's the other word for Chevron? What else do we call Chevron, Me'arat HaMachpelah? What's the other name for the city? Kiryat Arba. I have a question. Why don't we call it Kiryat Shmone? Oh, because Kiryat Shmone is in the north, right? But let's ask the question. No, so Kiryat Arba is Arba Zugim. Arba Zugot, thank you. Arba Zugot. I don't understand. Call it Kiryat Shmone. Why are we calling it Kiryat Arba? You can tell me, Beseder, Yesh Arba Zugot. But you could also call it Kiryat Shmone. There's 8 people buried here. Why do we call it Kiryat Arba, not Kiryat Shmone? Why do we call it Kiryat Arba, not Kiryat Shmone? Excellent. Because even after death, even after they passed away, some people it's good news, some people maybe it's not. It's not. What
happens if you have more than one wife?
Excellent. The Rambam deals with these questions. It's a great question, right? What's going to be? What's going to? No, it's a great question. Very good. I'm on a simple level.
Who gets to stay with him?
Excellent.
What happens with Yaakov? No, he has 2 wives. So who gets to stay with him in the afterlife?
Oh, Yaakov? So we see by the... Oh, so you're asking... I thought you were just asking in general. No. So that's why he brought Leah. The fact that Leah's the one... That's what we said. He was crying. We said, why is he crying?
Only the first one gets to stay.
Because... Why? Because that was the kosher marriage.
That's the kosher.
That was the kosher marriage. Great. Oh, very good. So that's a good question. Most likely, we'll say both for the sake. But the point I'm trying to bring out is that Yaakov, what was the question? Let's make sure we're following. Yaakov meets Rachel and he starts to cry. Why is he crying? Because they're not going to be buried together. So what? At this point of your life, that's what you're crying. That's what you're crying about. You have bigger problems or bigger issues, or live the moment, get married, build a home. Why are you crying about this now? Because we believe in Judaism that marriage is eternal, and the fact that they're not being, the fact that he saw Beruach HaKodesh that they're not being buried together, that means something was going to be wrong. Something was going to be amiss. Something wasn't going to be right in this marriage. And indeed, that's what transpired. He marries Leah. Granted, he marries Rachel, and you can rationalize al pi halacha that he was allowed to marry Rachel, but it's not 100% kosher. Therefore, it affects him that he will not. He doesn't bring her into Me'arat HaMachpelah, and he's too embarrassed to bring her into Me'arat HaMachpelah, and also he doesn't say Birkat HaMazon, and he passes the kos shel bracha on. So we see that indeed Lavan did do a lot of damage here when he mixed up Leah and Rachel. And once again, even though we found al pi halacha that you are allowed to, it's still not 100%. We'll conclude one final point is you find a lot in Judaism. You find a lot in the initial building of the Jewish people. These, we'll call it what's the right word to use? These murky situations. What do I mean by murky situations? You see that Yaakov Avinu gets married to Rachel and Leah, 2 sisters. You see that where does David HaMelech come from? David HaMelech, the Midrash says, comes from Sodom. What does it mean he comes from Sodom? That Lot had relations with both of his daughters. From there came Ruth HaMoabiyah. From there came David HaMelech. From there comes Mashiach. Very murky situation. Also, where do we see what's also part of the lineage of Mashiach? Yehuda v'Tamar. That also wasn't the most kosher of relationships. Not kosher at all, we would say. So you could start asking a question. lot of these murky situations. Like we look into the building blocks of Klal Yisrael, and we find these situations that are kind of shrouded in mystery or shrouded in suspicion. Why is it that it's like that? Why is it that when we go back to the building of Klal Yisrael, Yaakov marries two sisters, Lot is with his two daughters, and from there comes David HaMelech, Yehuda is with Tamar, and eventually Mashiach is going to come. Why is it like that?
Lot was tricked. It's not that he did it by purpose.
בסדר. I'm with you. אבל למה ככה? למה צריך להיות ככה? בוא נגיד, זה דוד המלך בא מזה? if I'm not, it's the מדרש, זה דוד המלך איפה בא? הוא כתוב, בא מסדום.
בא מסדום, מלוט.
אז למה ככה? למה יהודה ותמר, לוט ובנותיו, ויעקב ושתי אחיות? למה ככה? Why does it have to be that way? So the Arizal explains, is because you have the kochot tum'ah are always looking to destroy. They're always looking to sabotage. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to take special neshamot and he has to camouflage them. He has to put them where the kochot tum'ah are not going to look. They're going to look in a place of kedusha. They're going to look in a place of tahara, but they're not going to look in a place of tumah. They're not going to look at Lot and his two daughters. They're not going to look at Yehuda v'Tamar. No, Mashiach would never come out of that. The Shevatim, they're never going to come out of Yaakov and two sisters. The Arizal explains that why do we find these murky situations, these less than kosher situations? It's because these special neshamot, when they come into the world, Hashem has to bring them in a roundabout way. Because if it's me'achuz yashar, comes in the kochot tumah, and they look to attack, they look to sabotage, they look to take the neshamot al pi Kabbalah. So Kiv Yachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings them in these roundabout situations in a way that the kochot tumah would never look there, or would never think that it would come out in this way to allow those neshamot to come into the world. Huh? Yeah, biduk. The Yetzer Hara is not going to bother them.
Because Yetzer Hara interrupting only the good people. Like you're trying as much as you go higher and higher and higher, and they push you down.
Correct.
So if you can succeed, even though I'm going to interrupt you and put things on you, let's see if you can pass this level.
Correct.
And you're always going to be there. So that's why God trying to avoid the Yetzer Hara come into that place. So at least don't interrupt them. Bring Mashiach from
this way, and this way the Yetzer Hara doesn't get involved or doesn't look in those places.
Yes.
Very good. So in any case, that's a path, that's a way to understand this entire saga, this entire story of how Yaakov Avinu ended up with Rachel and Le'ah. I want to emphasize once again, that was the destiny, like we explained. When he took the brachot, that was part of the package, and it was possible initially to do it properly. Marry Rachel first, Rachel passes away, then marry Leah. You could still have the 12 Shevatim. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way, but that was the initial path. That was the initial way to do this in the most kosher of way. Okay, Rabotai, we will stop here.